What up in his house? So what I gotta check is I gotta make sure that the live stream is actually going to go to the right place. What up in his house? So what I gotta check is I gotta make sure that the live stream is actually going to go to the right place. And it is. Okay, sweetness, awesome. So we can pause that. BrettMartineau.com/live, y'all. Morning. Happy Monday to you. Turn this guy on. I'm excited. There's a lot of cool stuff going on that's kind of shifted around, and I got a lot of stuff that I want to talk about. I got a lot more energy today. Part of that could be that I've shed the sideburns. Yeah, we're trying out. I'm going for Ragnar Lothbrok. I got a long ways to go on the beard, but I think the hair is coming along nicely. You should have seen me in the little miniature ponytail I had yesterday. Sue wanted to kill me. But yeah, we're going for the long on top, short on the sides effect. And you know, with the face, I've never really done a no shave November, and this is like not even really it, but this is my version of like not really committing to it. So like just scruffing the sides but leaving the mustache a little bit thicker. Anyway, anywho, happy Monday to you. Had an incredible weekend. A lot of stuff happened this last weekend, and I want to talk a little bit about that, but I want to kind of get back to the story that we were telling as well. So all I will say about today, and I'm going to come back to this story in the future. All I'll say about today is that I've said in the past that the way that you feel about what you're doing has more impact on your ability to do it than just about anything else. In other words, if you feel like you can accomplish something, if you believe that you can accomplish something, and if you have that confidence, you are much more likely to do it. Whereas if you don't think that you can do it, chances are you're not going to do it. And I think that extends, it's more than just the cliche, like believe in yourself and you can achieve or whatever. I think it has to do more with finding ways to keep yourself in a situation where you are confident in your ability to move forward and your ability to do the things that you need to do. But also make sure that you are avoiding situations where you are hampered. Long story short, this last couple of weeks, my computer basically died, which is sad. But part of it, I think, is because I just ran it into the ground, which is a whole theoretical thing that I've been thinking about that I want to talk about. I'm probably going to do a separate series just about that because it's so fascinating to think about. But I haven't really been working with the computer, and so I've been working from my phone. And as you know, as I've bragged many times, my phone is incredibly powerful. And it can double as a computer in a lot of senses, but it doesn't quite get you all the way there. And so I felt hampered. I couldn't really do everything that I wanted to do. And so it was very, very frustrating, and I felt really behind. Well, I got back. I went and I got a new computer. I'll tell the whole story of how that happened and all the cool stuff there. But within 36 hours of having a new computer, I feel completely caught up from 3 weeks worth of getting behind. Like, boom, boom, done. And so I think it's important, like, anyway, there's a whole, I'm not going to go further into that because there's a whole thing that I haven't quite fully unpacked yet that I want to talk about. But it was a lot of fun. One thing I will say is that it was a bit of a trip to go get this computer. And during the trip, I recorded some stuff in the car. So there's going to be some videos coming out in the next, probably not until next month till we can get them formatted. We might actually start releasing them one at a time, but different format. You're probably not used to listening to people talk while they're driving on the highway. It's first for everything, right? So I want to take us back and kind of get back to the early days at Infusionsoft, and we're getting into the second time I worked at Infusionsoft, so my second stint, if you will. After I was in Ukraine and after I messed up my knee, which I talked about last week, after I messed up my knee, I had to come back for surgery. And I sort of sat around for a little while, and we didn't know, for the first couple of weeks, we didn't know for sure if there was going to be a surgery or what it was going to be, so I got an MRI and a bunch of stuff. I was just sort of like hanging around, not really doing anything. And then we decided we're going to do the surgery because the guy in Ukraine said that I had torn my ACL, and the guy here with the MRI that I took here said that he didn't see any tears. And so it was like, which one is it? So we decided we'll scope it to kind of break the tie instead of doing another MRI, which that was like the only way that we could have been sure that it wasn't torn in some place and wasn't going to cause problems in the future. But anyway, so while I was in recovery after the surgery, after I could walk again, while I was in recovery, I went back to Infusionsoft. And this time, they were still working in the same office, but they had acquired the office next door. So we had two offices, and I remember even just the change, like where we were then to where they are now, it's just like it's like night and day. But when I came back, it was like, oh my goodness, this is just such a big deal. We've expanded to another office. We have so much more space. I believe the support department was still back in that same room, if I remember right. But I remember spending quite a bit of time in the new office, and making that transition, and just like as the team started to grow, and as there were more support reps, and as there were more developers, most of it was developers that we were building into. But as we started to grow, it was just amazing to me the growth, what we were able to accomplish. But something funny happened. And that is, at that time, while I was, while we were expanding and while the team was starting to grow and I had just come back, there was this interesting dynamic because a lot of the guys that I had trained, a lot of the guys that I'd worked with before were still there, but there were also a lot more people. And we had introduced a QA team that had never been there before. We had introduced a lot of different pieces, and it was just a different dynamic. And it was a little bit more, I think, thorough and a little bit more robust and, to be honest with you, a little bit more grown up. And, I had my struggles with that. I had some internal, it didn't last very long, but I had some internal struggles with like, oh man, like this is different than I'm used to. This isn't the small environment that I was sort of like top dog before I left. And now, I came back and I have a pretty insane work ethic, and I think that comes from those times. And so I was able to establish myself again very quickly. And not that establishing myself is the point, but I was able to do that. And it was just an interesting little moment where it was like, this is not what I was expecting. This is not what I'm used to. This is not what I left. And to be honest with you, not a whole lot from those times really stands out very much. Like, we sort of did more of the same. We expanded. I believe at that point is when they had made the transition to fully selling Manage Pro instead of Mortgage Pro. And around that time, they had changed the name of the software to Infusionsoft. And the name of the company was still Infusion Software and Consulting. And I believe it was while I was home that they officially made the transition to calling the company Infusionsoft, and the product Infusionsoft was all one thing. But very interestingly, during that time, that was like there was a lot going on in my life during that time, and I was still very young, so everything that happens back then is like blown way out of proportion. So I'm gonna tell you the story because I think it all kind of fits together. Like me coming home for the knee surgery, it turning out to not really be as bad as I thought it was, but then also still needing to get surgery and do recovery. Then going back to Infusionsoft and it not being exactly what I had expected it to be, and then also, so there's some romantic aspects to this story. So I had a girl that I had been seeing. We started seeing. We went to prom, my senior year. I had known her for a long time. She runs in the same group of friends, same crowd, but we had never really been like super close. And at the time, my senior year, I didn't really understand how things worked, and so I asked her to prom, kind of like, it was almost robotic the way that I did it. It was like, you ask people to prom. Okay, so I'll ask you. Do you want to go to prom? Sure. We actually had a great time. I really enjoyed it, and I really liked her, and we had a good time, and everything was fun. But it was the end of senior year, and she had just come out of a relationship, and there was some other stuff that was going on, so it was confusing, and we were young, and blah blah blah. Anyway, so she was going to go off to college, and I was going on my mission and all this stuff. We kind of started hanging out more and started dating a little bit more, and we really liked each other, and so it kind of became a thing. We became a thing, so to speak, and started dating a little more seriously. Anyway, I went to Ukraine the first time, and we wrote back and forth, and everything was great. And then I came back to get surgery, and she got put under a lot of scrutiny by her friends and her family because coming home from a mission is like a sign of dishonor, even if you come home for surgical reasons. Because nobody really knows. Everyone's like, oh, Brett Martineau's home? What did he do? What did he do wrong to get sent home? It's like, well, nothing. And so she was under a lot of pressure from that angle. And honestly, at the time, the mission, it's funny because even the mission itself goes back to this same core concept, which is that I was sort of afraid of really giving myself to anything. Like, the mission was difficult, and I didn't understand why it had to be difficult. And I was used to, like, high school where, you know, I didn't really have to apply myself. I could get away with pretty much anything. And I passed all my classes, and I was able to do everything that I wanted to do, and I never really had to, like, be disciplined at all because I could do pretty much anything and still survive. And I was in honors classes, and I was a smart kid. I still am a smart kid. I could figure stuff out, you know, and I was able to pass things, and I understood concepts for the most part, but I never really had to dig in and commit myself to something. And so the mission was difficult for me. And I honestly, I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but I honestly saw the surgery as potentially an out. Because in my mind, historically, ACL tears required like 6 to 9 months of recovery. And I was already almost 6 months in. So 6 to 9 months meant that that if I went back, it would be extending, like basically my mission would take like 3 years, which I didn't think they would do. So in my head, I was like, oh, I'm going to go get surgery. It's going to take me 6 months to recover, 9 months at best, or 9 months to recover, 6 months at best. And then at that point, it's going to be like, well, do we send him back, or what do we want to do with him? And so I was almost like checked out of the mission at that point because I didn't really want to go back and really have to dedicate myself to it, to commit myself and really give myself fully to it. And in the same way, when I came back from the mission to get surgery, and a little microcosm of it, I went back to Infusionsoft, and it was like, I was able, because I have a good work ethic, and because I can put my head down and just grind, but I never really, like, gave myself to it, right? I never really, and that later in this story, you'll see how that came to fruition, but I never really gave myself to it. And I kind of just wanted to be done with the hard stuff, which was the mission, and which was like wondering whether that stuff was going to happen, and just go back to like something that I could control, something that where I was top dog, which was at Infusionsoft, because I know how to like make that stuff happen. You know, you put in the hours, and you pick up the phone, and you talk to customers, and you can make it work. Like I understood that. But then this girl got put under a lot of secondary pressure, and she was supportive of me at first. She was supportive when I came home. She was like, "Cool, we're gonna get you healed, and we'll figure out what's gonna happen from there." And we had, in classic young Mormon fashion, we were already talking about getting married and starting a family and having kids. And I'm like 20, 19, right? She's 18, and I had basically decided that I was ready to be done. I was ready just to stop, not go back, settle down, get married, you know, have a bunch of kids, and start the rest of my life. And around that time, I had a conversation. I sort of, there's a bunch of stuff that happened, because around that time is when she decided that it wasn't for her. She sort of started to pull away. She never actually said anything to me, and I've always been a little bit annoyed about this, even to this day. She never actually said anything to me. But right towards the end, it was like I was really struggling about whether I wanted to go back or not. Again, because I was, you know, in my young mind, I wanted everything to just be the way that it was supposed to be, and not have to like work again, start from scratch, and like build up from nothing, because I didn't know how missions worked. I mean, if I went back now, oh my goodness, I'd be the best missionary of all time. But at the time, all I knew was like how to go in and sit in an office and grind. And I actually thought to myself, this is kind of funny. When I was on my mission, I thought, you know what would be awesome is if they put me in the office. I would be really good in the office, because I understand that dynamic. I understand how to work in that setting. You get up, you go there, you do stuff, and then you close it down and go home. But I didn't like the whole go out and talk to people and talk to them about stuff they don't want to talk about. It was a sales job, and I wanted to be in support, right? And so when I went back the first time, I kind of found my footing again. But still, there was some differences. Like it wasn't just sales. It wasn't just sales, development, and support. Now we had QA, and we in the development department and the support department was kind of answerable to the QA department. There was just everything just sort of went into like a mix of like I don't know what's really going on. I don't really know what my position is. Luckily, Infusionsoft didn't really care. The company and everyone that was the decision holders didn't really care if I stayed or left. Like they were cool if I stayed and just never went back because I was a good worker. But also they were supportive of it's up to you. In fact, it works out because the company, people make the decisions are also family members, and they actually all came to me. I'll never forget this. All of them came to me and said, individually, but sort of at the same time, and said, look, family, work, just as friends, as brothers, like, doesn't really matter to us. Like, you do what you're going to do. And that was pretty powerful for me because at the time, it's kind of hard to imagine, but at the time, going back there was no other choice. That was like what you do, that's what you have to do. And I wasn't really convinced that I wanted to. But when the pressure was, this is the interesting thing, when the pressure was off that I needed to be something already that I wasn't, and when I didn't have to worry about picking everything up and like everybody seeing that I got it right away. I think that's the thing that scared me, is that I got Infusionsoft. I got the customer base. I know how to speak to them, and I know how to interact with them. I know how to get them what they need. But I didn't know how to convince someone who didn't want to be convinced that they should join a church and give 10% of their income for the rest of their lives and stop drinking and smoking. I didn't know how to do that because I'd never done it before, first of all. I never really experienced anybody that really wanted to do that. And so for me, it was like, well, just stop doing it. Easy, done. And it was difficult. So when the pressure was gone, and when I realized that it didn't matter to them, it became easier for me to realize that it didn't matter to me either. And because it didn't matter to me either way, I realized that what I wanted to do was see it through. I wanted to be done with it, but I didn't want to live with what could have happened for the rest of my life, right? So I decided I'm going to go back. Well, I got super, super lucky because the guy that was running my mission in Ukraine had been keeping tabs on me. And as soon as I said I'm ready to go back, he was like, I want him back here. Most of the time, if you go home for surgery, you get sent someplace stateside just so they can monitor you. But my mission president was like, no, I want him back, which was the best thing that could have happened to me for my own personal growth. Because I went back, and I wasn't a great missionary. I wasn't totally obedient. I didn't do everything that I was supposed to. I worked hard. I did. I made a lot of really close friends. I talked to a lot of people, and I did what I could, but I wasn't. That's a whole other story that I could talk about, which maybe I'll talk about tomorrow. But the important thing was when I realized, and kind of it all ties together, when I realized that it didn't really matter to other people, and therefore it was all my own decision, that I think ties in pretty closely with this whole idea that I've been experiencing the last couple of weeks, which is if you feel like you can do it, then you can. And I was paralyzed, feeling that I couldn't actually go back because I thought I have to do this because someone else wants me to, and I can't. I have the hardest time operating when it's somebody else's prerogative. Like when someone else is in control and I don't get to make the decision myself. It doesn't really matter what I do. I don't really care half the time. But if I'm not the one that gets to make the decision, it can really bother me. And so in that situation, because I was in control, at that point I was no longer afraid of not being able to do what I was expected to do, because I wasn't expected to do anything. It was what do I want to do? And I think more and more and more as business owners and as entrepreneurs and as people, the less we depend on others to give us what it is that we're supposed to do, and the more we make those decisions ourselves. I got to be very careful with this because my feet are bare. If it burns my feet, I'm going to drop this thing and it's going to break and shatter. It's going to be a real dramatic nightmare. Oh, that's so good. The more that you can focus yourself on doing everything that you want to do based on your own decision, based on your desire to do it, and the more you can set yourself up for situations where not only are you able to do what you want to do, but you're able to be successful at it, and you're able to believe that you can. So remove all the unnecessary friction getting you to where you need to go. If that's like a person that's negative, say goodbye to them. If it's like you watch too much Netflix, sell your TV. If it's that's been a problem of mine, that's why I bring that up. If it's time management, go work with a coworker. Find someone else to work with. If it's accountability, hire an assistant, right? Remove the friction that's keeping you from achieving the things that you want to do. And what will happen is all the stuff that you're holding yourself back on, you'll no longer have any reason to do so. And you'll just sort of flow into where it is that you want to go. So crazy, crazy experience. And I hadn't thought about a lot of that stuff in a long, long time. But important, I think, to pay attention to. Anywho, I don't know if anybody noticed, but I finally went back and got all of last week's morning coffee shows like uploaded. I tried for about a week to do them pre-recorded and then do like trailers and all this kind of stuff, and it got to be too much to try and do it in real time. So we're gonna do live from YouTube, and then we'll get them all uploaded all the different places and stuff, and then you might start seeing trailers for some of the old episodes in other places. But check it out. What you should do right now, if you're watching this is YouTube. And in order for you to know when I'm doing this in the future, so I don't have to keep, well, I'm going to keep doing it, but so that you don't have to follow the link from Facebook or from Instagram or whatever, subscribe to the channel. So right in this area, oh no, it's actually over here. Somewhere, here or here, maybe here, I'm not exactly sure where it is. There's a subscribe button. Regardless of whether it's there is one just below this video down here. Down there. Hit subscribe, hit the notification icon, and join me in the mornings. I'm here between 7:30 and 7:40 every morning. Talk for about 20 minutes. Not super I'm not super hardcore. I'm not trying to like bash you with anything. I'm just telling you stories. So it can be kind of fun. Check it out. Join us. Subscribe. Click the bell icon to get notified. We'll see you tomorrow.